Welcome to Papa's Workshop. I'm doing two things for you today. The first is I'm showing you the laser engraving on the Space Force, and I want to put it up there with the rest of the branches of service. The next thing that I want to be able to do is show you where the keyhole slot is going to be, and I want to show you how to generate it without using easel and without using the easel apps. We're going to generate the G-code in VCarve desktop, and I'm going to show you both the vertical and the horizontal G-code to be able to give you a choice on which one you want to do. Let's get started. Today I'm going to be engraving the United States Space Force. This will complete the series of all of the branches of service that I've done. And I'm using the VCarve today with my JTech laser attached to it to be able to do this engraving. Now, the most important thing that I wanted to be able to tell you about this engraving is that I am using 100% power, and I am doing this at a 65 inch per minute, which is actually a little bit slower than what I have done before. And that makes it where it's just going to be a little bit darker, as you can see in the close-up. In this close-up view, I want you to pay particular attention at the rate that this is moving. You see how the laser goes very fast when it's not doing the engraving, it then slows down. This is a nice special setting that is in the Lightburn software that helps to reduce the time to be able to do it engraving. So during the burning portion, the actual engrave, it is being able to do that at the 65 inches per minute. But when it's not engraving, it's not burning, then it will move between that blank space at 200 inches per minute. Now, how do you do that? I want to show you the setting in the Lightburn software. Now, I learned about this setting from one of my subscribers. His name is Wayne. So I want to be able to give a big special shout out to Wayne and say thank you for being able to share this tip, because it really does cut down on the amount of time that it takes to do the engraving. To get to this setting, you're going to click on the Edit, drop down to where it says Device Settings. Once that window opens up, then you're going to be able to come right over here to this, and it says Fast White Space Scan. Now in this case, I have it set for 200 inches per minute, but you can go ahead and change that to whatever you want. So just click on the little switch so it turns green and you're set. So back to the carving, you can see that it is going to save quite a bit of time, especially on engraving such as this, where there is an awful lot of white space in this logo. So this was a fun project to do, and I was glad that I've been able to complete my collection, and I'm ready to get this hanging on the wall. But there's a couple more steps that we need to do. I flipped it over on the back side and opened up this file from my Papa's Workshop. That logo always goes onto the bottom on the back side of my projects. So all I have to be able to do is flip the sign over and just slide it right into position. I can put it right up against a bunch stop because that takes care of my y-axis, center it where I want to along the bottom, and start the engraving. The last thing to do now is to go ahead and put in the keyhole slot. Well, I've been working on a sign to finish my collection, and this is the Space Force sign. But I'm to the point now where I need to be able to put the keyhole slot in the back. And the first question that I have to answer is, do I want to put this slot vertically or horizontally? And there's some advantages to each. Now, if I put the slot in a vertical position, that means when I put it on the wall, it needs to be exactly level and balanced. Otherwise, if it's a little bit off-centered, it's going to hang crooked. And the last thing that you want is to have a sign that hangs a little bit crooked. So it's very, very important to make sure that a vertical keyhole slot is exactly in the center. Not only the center of the sign, but center as far as the balance point. And you hope those two are the same. The other type would be the ones that run horizontal. That means that you could put it on to the nail or the screw and then slide it left or right until it balances and that it hangs straight. And that is a very important thing. But today I'm going to talk about both. They're doing the vertical and the horizontal. In the easel software, you have the option to be able to go to the apps, and there is a keyhole slot generator. However, I don't want to do that at this point. I want to be able to use the CNC for Newbie and the G-code. And I want to be able to generate that G-code in the VCarve desktop, and it doesn't have such an app. I'm going to go into the VCarve desktop and I'm going to create a very small rectangle. Typically my keyhole slots are going to be 1 inch tall. So that's going to be the height of it. And the same thing, if I go horizontally, it's going to be 1 inch. Now, as far as the width of this, I'm only going to go 1/100th of an inch wide. When you design the toolpath in the VCarve desktop, you want that bit to go straight down, go up along this toolpath, and then come back and exit out of virtually the same point. It will be offset by 0.01, 1/100th of an inch. Now you could make that smaller. It's just an easy round number that I can use. Now when I do the horizontal, it's going to be designed a little bit different. The toolpath is going to be where it enters on one side. It will come across, stop, and exit out the other side. Now that wouldn't work very well with a vertical one, because if you have the entry point down here and then you exit it out the top, you would lose the effectiveness of the keyhole slot. So that's the reason that the vertical one is going to be generated using a rectangle. Now I want to talk about the bits themselves. This is a keyhole bit where it's wider here at the top and it still has a cutting surface on each side. And the way this works, it's got to be able to plunge down the full depth and then move. When this bit plunges down, it will make this round hole. But you want it to go deep enough so that it's cutting this slot along here. If you had this bit where it came down and exited here, that would defeat the purpose completely of having a keyhole slot. Now that is why when this bit is plunged down into the material, it cuts down along that tool path and then it returns back and exits out of virtually the same point. Otherwise, the keyhole slot won't work. However, when we do it on the horizontal, we can do that, and we can use a single tool path where the bit will plunge down into the slot, follow the tool path, and then exit on the other side. And that is workable because your project is going to be hanging in the center. And that works very well. So that I've got several different bits. And these bits, the profile is a little bit different. And you can see that by looking at these two. Plus, I went and bought a third bit, still in the box, but it has all the dimensions back here. Now these three bits are similar in design, but the actual specifications are a little bit different. What I want to be able to do is go into the VCarve desktop and create one bit that I can use and I can literally use that to be able to generate any of the tool paths and the keyhole slots that I want. So we're going to find a happy medium. Now on this particular bit, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this in the camera, but this has a little notch right here. And if I rotate this around, there is a second notch. Well, this is a good reference point for the plunge depth on how deep that needs to go. I typically use this depth. And if I take the calipers and I measure that, that works out to about 0.26 of an inch deep. So that's what we're going to use. If I go over to this bit and I measure down 0.26, that also will work. That would be the point right there, and that would be workable for this bit. If I look at the specifications for the brand new bit that I have, this depth is B. B is 7/16. I certainly don't want to go that deep. So for that reason, I can use the depth of cut for 0.26. The next question that you have to ask is, how wide is this? Well, if I measure across, that's about 0.38 of an inch. If I measure my other bit, this bit is a little bit smaller, 0.36 of an inch. Now granted, I don't use this bit a lot, but it is in my inventory. And this last bit is 3/8 of an inch, or 0.375. So all of these bits are close enough. I can use 0.375 for my width, and that will work just fine. Now the next thing, how fast do I want this to plunge into the material? Well, not very fast. And then what about the rate? Again, this is going to be going to full depth and then cutting along this tool path. I do not want it to go fast. So the feed rate, I think I'm just going to go 20 inches per minute and try that. So that's very slow, but again, we're only going 1 inch. So it's still going to take on 20 inches per minute, and we're traveling 1 inch. That's still not a lot of time. As far as the plunge rate, I want to slow that down even more. I don't want it to go in and just bury itself into the wood. I want it to be able to cut into that wood and do it fairly easily so it doesn't put a lot of strain on the bit. So for that reason, we're going to go with 10 inches per minute. All right. So let's go over to the computer now and let's key this information in and make a new bit and create some tool paths. I've opened up VCarve Desktop, and the first thing, we're going to create a new file. I'm going to open up and the job setup window comes open, and I'm going to select the single-sided. As far as the width, I'm going to set this at 3 inches, height same at 3 inches, and as far as the thickness of material, 0.75 is fine. The Z0 position is going to be at the material surface, and I'm going to leave the XY 0 position in the center. Don't need anything else, so I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. It's come up to the tool path, and I want to drop down to the tool database. Now the closest bit that we have to the keyhole slot would be an end mill and 1/4 inch, because these others I think just will not work. So I'm going to click on that end mill and all the information will come up. Now the first thing I want to do is go ahead and copy this. So I can down here at the bottom, I can copy it. It drops in a second end mill, exactly the same as the first. And I'm going to put this as 0.375 because that's the actual diameter of the bit. So I'm going to leave it right there. The other thing that I want to put on this note is I want to be able to have the depth of cut. And we had said it's going to be 0.26 of an inch for the depth of the cut. That way, anytime that I come and choose this bit, I can look back at this note and I can see exactly the depth of cut that I need to have. See that. But the other thing down here, as far as the total width, that is going to be my 0.375. So that is entered in. That is the diameter of the bit itself. The pass depth, that is going to be the 0.26 of an inch. Step over, I really don't need to worry about that, but I'm just going to leave it alone. I can't change the spindle speed. It's not connected to the controller. The feed rate, this is where I needed to change, and I wanted that to be at the 20 inches per minute and the plunge rate at the 10. The original number that was in here was 100 inches per minute and a plunge rate of 30 inches per minute, and that's far too much for this bit. So I think this will work a whole lot better. So I'm just going to go ahead and click apply, and that is taken care of. The last thing that I wanted to point out to you, I do need to change the name. And by changing the name, you click on this right here where it says edit the tool's name. And I didn't show that earlier, and I wanted to come back and show that to you. And up at the top where it says end mill, I clicked and opened that window, and I can just type in the new word, keyhole 0.375. I can click on this bit and drag it down to the specialty, and that's going to drop into that area. And that's where I want that bit to be. So now if I close out of this, and I go back up to Toolpath, select the tool database, and now I come over here to my end mills. Those are as it should be. There's nothing extra there. I can come down to my specialty. I can click on this, and I have everything set. Now over here, let's create the toolpaths. The first toolpath that I want to do is the vertical. So I'm going to go right here and select the rectangle, and I'm going to keep it at 0 and 0 for the center point. We're going to leave this square, and I'm going to type as far as the width on my x-axis to be 0.01 with a 1-inch height, and we're going to create that. So that becomes the toolpath right here. Now let's zoom in. Well, let me close this first. So let's zoom in. And you can see that is the toolpath. I'm going to click on it so it's highlighted, and there it is. Now one of the things I want to do is eliminate this path down here. I really don't need to create the actual rectangle. I need this bit to plunge in, go down on this toolpath, and then come back. So how do I get rid of this? Well, by going over here and clicking on the edit nodes. And now I'm going to zoom in even closer. Now you can see the nodes are present. This green dot right here is the start point, and you can see the little arrow. It would start here, plunge in, and go across, and actually follow the toolpath of the rectangle. But what I want to be able to do is eliminate this. And as I bring the cursor up, there's a little symbol that pops up there. I don't know what that little symbol's called, but what that does is when I have that appear, I can right click, and then I want to be able to delete that span. By deleting this span, what has happened now is that the green dot has moved over to this right side, and that's perfectly okay. As the bit will plunge down at this point and follow this toolpath, and then come back down this second line all the way back down to this point and exit. Virtually the identical same position. Remember, it's only 0.01 inch over to the left. So with this done now, let's go ahead and exit out of this. Now let's go over and create the actual toolpath. And I want to use the profile. We're going to click on that. I want this to start at 0. I only want it to plunge 0.26 of an inch. Now let's select the bit. If I go over to the bits to select it, I want this keyhole right here to be able to be selected. And that verifies, in case I don't remember, that we're cutting a 0.26 of an inch, 0.26 of an inch there. Everything is okay. So this now shows my keyhole bit in position. We're doing one pass. That's all I need to be able to do. And I want this to cut on the path. Everything else is fine. So I'm going to go down here and I'm just going to click on calculate. Look at the toolpath from here. This is where it's going to be plunging down, and that's coming down to the surface at a faster rate. And then this is where it's going to plunge into the material at the 10 inches per minute. And then you'll be able to see where it's going to follow that toolpath right along here and then come back, and then it'll be able to exit out at that same point. Yeah, I want to be able to preview this, and you can see how it cuts right down, comes back, and then exit out. Now let's go ahead and do the horizontal one. I've got everything cleared out. I select this icon for the draw line, and I can put this line literally anywhere that I want it right now. I can move it, and it doesn't really matter. But when it comes time to be able to release it, I'm going to bring it right up there, and you can see where it snaps, and now that is horizontal. I'm going to double click on my toolpath to bring up the little handles, and I can grab it right here in the center, and I can slide it anywhere that I want. If I can bring it right down to the center of my workspace, or I could slide it over and anchor it at the center using the right edge of it. The length of this doesn't really matter. If it's a little longer, a little shorter, that's okay. Now it's time to create a toolpath for this vector. Click this little icon right up here at the top, and that switches me over to the toolpath menu. And I'm going to, got to close this out first. And I'm going to click right up here on the profile toolpaths. And again, I'm going to start at the surface at the 0 depth. We're only going to be carving down 0.26 of an inch. Now we have the keyholes bit already selected and definitely on path. So everything else is fine. So let me just go ahead and hit calculate, and it'll generate the toolpath for this. And at this point you can see the toolpath that it's going to be carving. The red line is where it brings it down to the surface at a faster rate. And then the green lines where it's plunging into the surface of the wood, carving along the blue line, and then it exits out the green. Perfect. That's what I want it to be able to do. Now I want to preview and show you what it looks like with the bit doing it. You can see how it comes down and it stops. The other thing I want to notice is that it doesn't actually show the keyhole slot because it doesn't have that type of geometry, but it does show as if it was an end mill. So now you can choose vertical or horizontal, whichever works best for you. Hi everyone, thank you for watching my video today. If you like the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell next to it so you'll be notified on the different videos that I upload. Also check out the videos over here to be able to stay up to date on the happenings in my shop. So again, thank you for watching my videos.